Next, we have my friend here, Eric Redmond, who is from Commerce, which is where I'm from and where I live, in case you didn't know. Eric is really the epitome of when life hands you a really sour lemon, how you can make sweet lemonade out of that, and not just for yourself, but sharing that lemonade with others. And sorry, I'm getting emotional. Eric's going to share his story. We've got Coach Jarvis here. He's going to talk a little bit about the book that Eric wrote. And then Angie's going to go on sharing about the foundation. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
I don't think it's a Rotary meeting now if we don't cry. So it's all good.
You got the. Oh, yeah.
My mouse is like it's school. That keeps jumping.
Yeah.
Mouse.
There,
It keeps blinking on me.
yeah. All right, it's close.
It's getting close. It's close. It's close. Boom.
I like the sound effects.
I think I just messed it up. Begin. Ready, Sly?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Madison, for asking me to speak to you tonight. I think simply more to share my story. My name is Eric Redmond, and everyone in Commerce calls me Radio, because I love his talk. I am here because on June 2003, my life changed a blink of an eye. I had my 5 or 6 years was gone. Until then, the typical teenage boy, licensed, played football and played golf. I was always on to a birthday party when I had my accident, and it changed my life in more ways than one. June 2003 began like most days. I had football workouts, cut grass at the country club, and then started driving to the birthday party. I controlled my forward. I curved and flipped it several times. The fact that I was found rescued is a miracle in itself. I was left by the Grady Hospital at last. They immediately taken in for emergency surgery to repair some internal bleeding and my collapsed lungs. I also had a traumatic brain injury, TBI, was in a coma. My brain was swelling. At this point, I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. Through God's grace, I made it the first 48 hours. It continued to improve after that. I found out that almost 100 people gathered at the Commerce Fire Station to pray the way we were on how I was doing. As soon as that, a lot of family and friends gathered at Grady and set up Camp Commerce in the waiting room. President signs popped up all over Commerce, Station County. When my mom saw me at Grady Hospital, she said I looked like I was asleep and did not seem to have any visible injuries. The doctors said I was in a critical condition and we would have to wait to see if I would survive or not. It became apparent that I would make it. My parents had the transition that falls from recovery to recovery, rehabilitation, rehabilitation. At that time, I did not know much about traumatic brain injuries. I learned a lot in a short time. I spent a couple of weeks in the trauma unit at Gurney Hospital when I was transferred to Scottish Rite for rehabilitation. And when I was a baby, I learned everything. My injury was unusual and it was like a stroke. I learned how to breathe on my own. I learned how to slow and fast I could eat. I learned how to talk, which I usually come at on the radio. I love to talk all the time. I had physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy every day during the week. During this time, patient I was staying around our house at Scottish Rite Picture Dunwoody House, so they could be close to me and see me every day. In March 2004, roughly 9 months of the rape, I started back to school. No, only had one class at first, and another a few weeks later. The biggest issue was my memory. I had short-term memory trouble. Everything is the brain injury. I still have issues with it. It's my fault for my poor memories. Took my friends, my teachers, my family at home to help me get through my schoolwork. Teacher and friends come to the house, work with me every night. This thing I like to get on track. I graduated with my class in 2005. Being Jarvis, everything I said to him, I told him my action, to him, I would one day write a book. I was still kind of diving in partially in a coma. I think it was when I was nuts. Jarvis said, let me know when you're ready, we will start. If I thought I feel about it, I felt everything at that time.
You gonna join him?
But God, I took it in my heart to share his story of my action and recovery. Even though I left me by. The funny thing is, I questioned too. I could have written a book, but I couldn't remember what I ate for lunch. I just asked God to help me because I don't know how to get started. This was one time I had to live on faith with my boss son. Fifth anniversary of my accident, I started a business called Watson Party Rentals. I come up with a name from John 10:10, where you just start to function and have it to the full. I told one of my books published on 10th anniversary of my accident in 2013, the time I was part of my time, God's time, on 2 different clubs. We started writing in 2012, published at least about October of 17, 2 years later. 4 years after the deadline. There was many setbacks. We had to find the editor through the mutual friendly commerce. We found Miss Virginia, or Miss Stacy, that I called her. She took a rough draft and helped us bring it together into the final book. There were 2 reasons I wanted to write the book. One, I felt like I had more work to do with God's help. Allowed me to survive for a reason. Second, I hope that my story can help people who want to tough times like I was, the storms that passed. I want to try and raise money for charities that are dear to my heart.
All right, this is where I'm supposed to jump in. And I didn't know until a couple of days ago I was even supposed to say anything. So I'm just going to ad lib it. Basically, he hadn't been home long when he hit us with the, I want to write a book. And my first response was, you ain't never read a book. How you gonna write a book? And I run into Joe now, has he read this one yet? But Radio and I got close when he was in about fourth grade. I was teaching and coaching at Commerce, and I was on the middle school staff, but at Commerce we're so small. If you're on the football staff, you're on everything. So we did middle school, JV, varsity, everything. Well, he was a ball boy, and that was one of my jobs, was chasing ball boys sometimes. And eventually he worked his way up to water boy, which back then, and it's kind of funny this year because of COVID, we went back to it. Back then we had the little Coke trays, little cups of Dixie cups, and we'd have to fill up the individual cups. And so he was soaking wet after every game from running out on the field with those cups. And this year, you know, we kind of went back to that a little bit because of COVID. I thought about him a lot. So we got pretty close, and then we both have a love of history. And so I got to finally teach him in 10th grade, which we had a ball. He aggravates me, I aggravate him, and I think we have the same level of immaturity, and it just kind of works. And so we got pretty close, and then, of course, in summer of his junior year, he has this accident. And I was with a friend helping paint a house, and I got a phone call, and they said, Radio's been in an accident. And it was somebody there at the accident, and they basically said, they just pulled him out, and I think he's gone. And I was crushed. And I ain't gonna lie, I spent a month mad as fire at God. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I was as mad at God as I've ever been mad at anybody. And I'm like, why him? Of all the punks over there in that school, of all the jerks and all the, you know. But it's funny how God, after time goes by, you begin to see why. And over the last 10, 15 years, I've seen why Radio was chosen for this purpose. Because he's done more with this situation than most people would ever do, given $1 million. And so, anyway, I went by the fire department that night and saw hundreds of people there. And I was, you know, it's for Facebook, Twitter, and social media. No, I mean, text messaging was still new. And so nobody knew what was going on. And the only way to find out was to call Grady. And they had this huge waiting room, a little bit bigger than this, a phone over here in the corner. And you would call and ask for the Redmonds. How's Radio? He had the wreck on a Thursday. On Saturday, I went to Grady to see him. I go in the room, and he let me go back and see him. And now he's laid out. He's unconscious. He had tubes coming out of every part of his body. He had tubes coming out of his toes, I think. I mean, there were tubes everywhere. And for about a month after that, I couldn't come around him. I just couldn't. I was too upset. I was angry. And I just couldn't handle it. I had a hard time with it. But then after a while, he ended up getting to come back home some, and I began to go over and see him a little bit more. And he would still, when he would come home, he would still have just this blank stare. It's like, I mean, he would look at you, but it's like he was just looking straight through you. And after about a couple of months, you began to see Radio coming back a little bit. And then he hit us with, I want to write a book. And I said, well, tell me when you want to write a book, and we'll write a book. Well, then he didn't bring it up for a while. And then a few months later, Jarvis, we're going to write a book. Okay, we're going to write a book. And this went on for several years. And then about 9 years after the wreck, he says, I want to have the book ready for the 10th anniversary, which would be 2013. So June 2012, we sat down and we just, their kitchen table.
We thought, what do you be ready?
Yeah, we thought. We spent a lot of nights around their kitchen table, and one thing that really helped, because you know he doesn't remember anything. His first memory, I think, was the Athens Academy football game that fall.
4 or 5 months later.
So Angie had kept a journal that entire time. So I was able to take her journal and piece together a lot of stuff. And we basically had a rough draft done in about 6, 7 months, 8 months. It didn't take us long to get a rough draft done. The problem was we needed an editor. And the lady we wanted to be the editor, who had volunteered to be the editor, was Mr. Drew, the principal, his wife, Claire. And she tragically had a massive heart attack and died that Christmas and just shocked everybody. So, yeah, I'm still stunned by that one. But a mutual friend in commerce knew Miss Virginia. And as he calls her Miss Daisy, you can see why she was a little spitfire now.
She's trying to Miss Daisy.
Yeah. She lived up in Powder Springs. And the first time we met her, she drove from Powder Springs to their house. And she gets out of the car, and the three of us just look at each other. And Bobby was standing there. We just look at each other like, oh, wow. Because she gets out. She had a little hump in her back. And I mean, she's like leaned over. And I was like, bless her heart. She drove from Powder Springs, 285, 85, all the way to Commerce. But she visited with us that night for several hours, and she was a mess now. And we got very close to Miss Virginia. And
she was sharp as ever. She was sharp. She knew her style.
Yeah, and she just passed away during the COVID. She didn't have, I don't think she had COVID. She congestive heart failure. But she, one night she'd been at the Redmonds and it was late. And she got to the Brazelton exit and had car problems, didn't she? And she pulled off on the side of the road and it's raining. She didn't call us. It's 10 minutes away. She calls, I think, her son, who lives in Powder Springs somewhere. While she's on the side of the road, Jackson County Deputy Sheriff pulls over and checks on her. And she tells him that she's been with the Redmonds in Commerce. Well, he knows them. So he takes her up to the McDonald's there at the Brazelton exit and just sits with her until her son can get there. So it's like a small world, But yeah, and so she was full of life. And so, but she actually, I don't know if y'all ever watched the Atlanta Hawks, but if you ever watch the Atlanta Hawks, Mike Glenn play for the Hawks. They call him the Stinger. She helped him publish several books. So she got us a meeting together with him about who to publish it, how to go about publishing, and she edited it, and it took us a while. But at times we would get very frustrated because it seemed to be taking so long to get this thing published.
She did what, a month, 2 weeks with one chapter, like 20 pages with the what's going on.
And one thing she did is I wrote a little introduction. She ripped it to shreds. I felt like I was like, yeah. But she told me later, she says, I wanted to rip into you first so that when I start ripping into him, he'll understand. So, I mean, it was like the red ink was somebody had been killed. There's red ink everywhere. Like, oh my God.
What was it she asked Eric? What kind of language do you want to use?
Yeah.
What was it she changed it to? What was the?
Well, I was going back to my language arts days in school where you're supposed to use proper language, don't use contractions and things like that. Well, she said, nah, make it sound just like he sounds.
She told me for that Timmy, he sounded like so.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, it took 4 years to get this thing done. We finally published it in 2017. But the good news about it is there's things we were able to include in the book that we wouldn't have been able to include, like him starting the golf tournament, him raising the money, and the team radio room, and we're going. And he got to actually meet President Trump and actually ask President Trump a question about what stem cell research. And, I don't care what your political affiliations are. You get a little redneck kid from little Commerce, Georgia, getting asked the President of the United States a question. That's impressive. So, I mean, I don't, I think that's neat as it can be. But he is able to ask President Trump a question about supporting stem cell research, things like this. So, we got the book published. It's done pretty well locally. And it led to the foundation being started, which is what Angie's going to talk about now.
Eric and I are going to talk about the foundation a little bit, wrap this up for you. We was approached probably back in 2015 or so. We spent probably the first 5 years in and out of the hospital with different types of surgeries. He had to have a pump put in his side. He had a lot of Botox, so that's why he looks so young at 34. He's had a lot of Botox. Who knew that Botox?
For the blood.
I thought Botox just to help us all look young, but that's used to keep your muscles from contraction. And they would Botox him and then Cyril cast him. He asked me one time, looking through pictures, he said, I didn't know I was broke up. I said, you weren't broke up. That's just where they're trying to straighten you out and get your posture back.
Arm, a leg.
Yeah, he said, I didn't know I broke anything. And then they went back and cut his tendons, and some of his toes are actually snapped because they tighten up and you stretched them out and stuff. So who knew all these secrets that they do this day and time, that we've come a long way with TBIs. Back in the older days, they just took them home and they just laid there or put them in a home somewhere. So praise the good Lord for, we let them learn to be independent and go back in society and do things now, you know. And you can tell he's not gonna hush anymore. He's gonna share until the good Lord calls him home. But we were approached. They had seen, I guess they thought that we had a strong little community and everything, and thought that Eric would be a good candidate that they put on board to raise $25,000 for a room at the new Ronald McDonald House to be named after him. We stayed in what was the original house there at Peachtree Dunwoody, and it was an old home that they had took and turned it into the Ronald McDonald House. And we were lucky, very lucky, that they only had two what they called total handicap rooms that you could get the wheelchairs in and out. And back then you had to share bathrooms in the halls, and you had to mark up your time that you was going to go and do that. And it was more like a family than it was really like a home. But their plans had been to build one with, I think there was only 18 rooms then, and they were going to build 32 rooms, double the capacity, have private bathrooms, and each one would have that, and a bigger kitchen. Yes, private kitchens for the ones that were cancer patients that need to stay, you know, more isolated than they come. Their whole thing is to be family oriented, so you're all in there, you can share with each other, really support each other during that time. Eric was in the summer, his accident was in the summer, so there were a lot more teenagers. Teenagers typically have more wrecks in the summertime. So he was lucky that they were not lucky, but he went through rehab with 16 teenagers that summer, all the way from Mobile, Alabama to South Carolina and North Carolina, anywhere from golf cart wrecks to, there was several with the car wrecks, but then there was this one little girl that had been on a horse, and a horse bit her, and she had a real rare kind of meningitis. So you know, just things that you just wouldn't think and put you there. But it was kind of good because the teenagers fed off of each other, you know, and aggravating and doing teenage stuff and play games with each other. And so it was a family-oriented thing. So when they contacted us, they told us that you'd have 5 years to raise $25,000, and we did have to almost like sign a house. We had to sign a contract, you know, that we would support that one way or the other. So we started praying, and we felt like that God had led that and opened that path for us. And so at first we had a couple of people just give us donations, and Eric actually by then had graduated, and he'd got some graduation money after he decided he wouldn't go off to college, and he gave every bit of that to start the house. So I think at that point we had about 10,011. So that's when some of them said, let's go back to a golf tournament, start that. The year that Eric had his accident, that he had worked over at the local country club. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Commerce Country Club, but Eric worked there. He cut the greens there beforehand, and that's where he just rode up around the country club there. Like I said, it's just a little redneck one. It's just how many holes? 9 holes, you know, but he wouldn't have his golf tournament anywhere else, you know. So that summer, though, they did raise some money. They raised over $25,000 for him while we were in Atlanta. So we thought, well, we'll bring this back or whatever. So we did, and I think that first year raised about 12 or something like that. So this will be our 7th. It is coming up in August the 14th, and we've turned into a little gala now too as well. Afterward, we do steak and steaks. So there'll be a group that plays in the mornings, and then a group will tee off in the afternoon, and then we end up we do we have a concert. And this year Eric had a good friend in Commerce that lost his life about a month ago, and we're going to do fireworks at the end in honor of him. So we got that coming up, so that's exciting. We did do the golf tournament last year, but it was didn't get to do any of the meals or any food or the after things. So we'll be excited to get everybody back together this year. Rumor has it we might be losing our golf tournament, golf course this year. Sounds like a subdivision or something's gonna come in. So we're kind of sad about that, but that's coming. And then after we started that, he got a little cocky and he said, well, Halloween, let's just dip apples.
Come on.
And we're like, okay, well, let's check out our team radio, which is a group of ladies that's just so good to come and help. And everybody said, radio wants us to dip some apple. They, oh, that'd be fun. We'll do that. He has us dipping about 500 apples. Yeah, we didn't just do 50. We can't, just stop with a few. So we had a friend that owns their parents own an apple orchard up in LJ. And so we go up there every year and get the fresh apples and dip those, and we put them in the containers, and they have little nice notes on them. So next year we might send some by Madison over here so y'all can share Eric's apples. So he liked that, and that turned out well for him. So then he said, let's do some chocolate covered some strawberries at Valentine. That one really did take off. I'm telling you what's true. I think I dipped strawberries in my sleep for a month after. So we wrapped those up pretty in a box and put a red bow on them and a tag as well. And so, and they're fresh. We stay the night before, and we'll stay up all night and get those things dipped. So we've kind of stopped with that being his 3 big projects because, like I said, they do well, and so we just kind of do with those. That's where we were building the Ronald McDonald's. Eric got to go to the new house, and he got to be at the ceremony of the groundbreaking, and there he is being funny with his little thing and with his nose. And what's your room number there? 17? Yeah. So that's after it opened that we got to go back beforehand and go to the grand opening of it and go to Sherry's room. And there's a sign-in thing in the room and a plaque with his story on it, how that became and everything. And so when they got ready to open the room, they sent us the thing, we'll know what to put on the door room there where the little butterfly is. And they had it down in honor of Eric Radio Redmond, what you think it was. He wouldn't have it. He said, no. He says, it's not my room. It's Team Radio's room. Because everybody that has ever gave, from the time I had my accident till we opened the room, it's their room. So it's Team Radio room. So everybody that helped with that, he don't like to take a lot of the glory for himself. He said it's a joint effort, and all those prayers and everything has helped us that. After Eric turned 21, they kind of threw us out of children's. They said, they let us go to these 22 a little bit longer, but they said, you got to be transferred. Eric said, man, I can't go to this hospital no more. And they said, no, you've outgrown it. So we go Shepherd at the Shepherd Center now. And really all he has to do is get his baclofen pump, every 6 months or so? Yeah, and so it's just more maintenance now, but if any surgery was to come up or anything, that's what would go through them and go to Emory is where his would be now. And then that wasn't enough for Eric, but he wanted to take on, that's where we show different checks we took out there. It also cost us $4,000 each year just to maintain that room. So that's part of our fundraiser ongoing projects right now is to make that commitment that we'll give that back. My understanding is out there at Steve Reynolds, somewhere right on the inside of 285, where Children's is building all that and they're moving their offices over there. Rumor has it we'll have a new Children's Ronald McDonald House there. So I think that some more hospitals are going to come in that area, and so the plan is to build one that. So we just pray that we'll be a part of that as well. Back before the pandemic, you actually could go, and that's what we loved about the house there. And there was cooking for them and the meals that we got to share and eat when we was there. And interact with the kids. Yeah, you can still do that. And you can take the food. I mean, it was just like the kitchen opened up for you, and so you fed them that. That was at Christmas. The year before the pandemic, his goal was to go Christmas Day because he doesn't have a family, so we wanted to go out and spend that. And we got to do that the year before, and then the pandemic happened in March. There's where one of the patients there, he always takes books out there. So that's where he's playing Santa Claus in that one. And then this was some kind of, I think it was the Shoe Society or something that we actually went back and helped with sometime or another. So we always enjoy that and giving back. So then the next year, Eric decided we're going to kind of do a back to school bash like y'all were talking about doing for the Boys and Girls Club. We do hot dogs. Eric takes his inflatables over there, and that was 2 years ago. Last year we couldn't do it as well. We just served them a meal. and he gives them a t-shirt. And this year it's going to be double. I talked to Trey, and they're going to bring both Boys and Girls Clubs over to Commerce. So we're planning on 200 Tuesday. So we will be sharing some love and helping about 200 kids this coming Tuesday. And I think we've got the Slushy Ice person coming this year, and the local radio station wants to come and broadcast live a little bit. So yeah, so we got a busy week between now and a busy month, that and the golf tournament coming up the next 2 months. And then most important is we try to reach out and help the families of TBI. You know, our life was changed. It was a Thursday night. That's another, we found out that there was one of the local students at the school that had a TBI brain bleed as a child, and there's some special bicycles that help them and stimulates them. So they were running short on some money to get him one, and Eric reached out. That was this past spring, I believe it was. And I heard, I talked to Alicia this past week, and the little boy still don't have his bicycle yet, but we're praying that he gets it before the golf tournament. He can come over and just ride around that day. So she said they're telling him the end of the month. So he's went all summer and still don't have it, but hopefully he'll get that. They're going to come and bring him that day to see us. But this past year we helped 4 families of TBI. Because, you know, when you get that call in the middle of the night or whenever, you pick up and you go wherever they are, you go. I didn't go home for 6 weeks. I mean, 6 months. Yeah, 6 weeks. I never come back to Commerce for 6 weeks. People brought me clothes and things out there. And some it's financially, it's a lot. It's just a lot. So we helped 4 this year. We've helped put some porches on some that's come home. We paid for hotel rooms, ramps. Bobby, my husband Bobby, it was going to cost us. Do you remember, Jarvis, how much that standing walker was going to be?
It's going to be a bunch.
Like 10,000
yeah,
or something?
Crazy.
So my husband, being in construction, took a picture of the one that they had out there, and he built Eric one, padded it, and it was an Eagle Walker. And so that's what they would actually stand you in to even learn to get your posture up and stand back up. And they could only do it seconds, and then they have to sit down and up. So Bobby built one. We've built some for some people that need that, because we were fortunate. Insurance paid better back then than it does now. So a lot of people's not getting to stay and get the services they need, especially to go into Atlanta, or do they have financial that they can stay out there like that. Ronald McDonald House is only charges you, I think it's $15 a night, but $15 a night adds up after a long time, you know. So, but you do get 2 meals there, and you're on your own for lunchtime there. But that's pretty good. So we try to do that as well. Just some statistics, you know, I didn't know anything about this at all either. Study shows back in 2015, 5.3 million Americans suffer from long-term disability due to brain injuries. 3.2 million need long care facilities, caregivers, somebody to tend to them each day. That can be very stressful and expensive, and a TB outpatient can run from 85,000 to 3 million. I don't know what you're up to after 18 years. But, you know, it doesn't go away. You know, it doesn't go away. Hopefully then there is some that gets back out there and they marry, or they get to go into school and do different things. Radio didn't want to go to college, and he could have went to college with extra help, but he said, I've got one time to get this walking, and I want to walk, you know. But he's walking with the help of his Papa Walker, as he calls it, you know. So life goes on, you know. You just make the best of it and go on. We'll let him end it now.
I've been listening to your wife and share also our God is. I still face many challenges because my accident. I've been proving that I come on the top of the press box on Friday night film football game. I still go to physical therapy and try to speak as I can. I've got life. I've come so far to have. I appreciate you letting me come speak to you today. Thank you. God bless.